Shin Megami Tensei V! Oh my god, did I just say that? The Shin Megami Tensei series has always been known for its challenge, so for this video, I've decided to challenge myself and not compare it to Persona. Shit, this is hard. Over the years, the Shin Megami Tensei series has gained quite the cult following thanks to its intricate and punishing turn-based battles within a bleak post-apocalyptic atmosphere. After the monumental success of a game that shall not be named, which catapulted Atlus into the spotlight, more eyes than ever were on the series, and dark, hellish descriptions began to crop up in an attempt to compare its individuality to other titles. One guy even called it the Dark Souls of JRPGs. Oh, that was me. With all this attention came a larger promotional campaign and more general interest for Shin Megami Tensei V, and despite my pessimistic outlook, the game really did manage to have a simultaneous worldwide release in 2021. And what do I think?
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay on high alert. We got a good video game on our hands.
Also, just a heads up, there will be minor visual spoilers throughout this video so I can show a wider range of gameplay, but I won't talk about major plot points or show important cutscenes. Anyway, while I failed to appreciate the intimate sensibilities of an outdated PS2 game filled with random encounters, despite my affinity for turn-based RPGs, I loved Nocturne from a conceptual standpoint, and wished for nothing more than to not need a game fac for the dungeons this time around. After recently finishing SMT V, I am more than happy to report that this new entry magically cuts out just about all of the headaches commonly associated with the genre. It's easily the most accessible game in the series while still maintaining that demonic flair and style. My goal with this review is not to confuse the overall quality of SMT V with how much it lives up to similar games, but I do want to talk about RPG conventions, because I think there's an interesting problem that this game solves when it comes to confusing tedium with difficulty. After my 60-hour abusive relationship with Nocturne, I felt like I was breezing through the early stages of SMT V, to the point where I was wondering if the game had lost some of its edge. When compared to the aggravating mechanics of many other turn-based games, it's easy to think of SMT V as easy from a glance. There's tons of ways to regenerate health and mana in the overworld, tons of tools and items to help customize builds to your liking, and fantastic quality of life improvements to demon fusion. Also, no random encounters or grinding. At least on normal mode. And ignoring the level 96 secret final boss, but that's another discussion for another time. As I progressed through the game and thought about these aspects some more, I realized that Shin Megami Tensei V is simply disposing of the antiquated mechanics we've come to accept over the years, and the result is a turn-based RPG built on an incredibly strong foundation that doesn't feel like it's trying to drive you insane. The 60-hour playtime is 60 hours of constant progression and exploration, not a couple cutscenes to complement 60 hours of grinding. I rarely found myself turning on auto battle during my playthrough, as almost every encounter felt intentional and designed, like a stream of constant boss fights. Apologies to all you folks with Stockholm Syndrome, this game's actually fun. The feature that I believe defines this entry in particular is exploration. Rather than send you through corridors, dungeons, and story events, the game allows you to take the main quest at your own pace while giving you more choices than ever before. You can avoid enemies you don't want to fight while getting the jump on powerful ones, choose which demons to side with in optional quests, and peek your luxurious locks around every corner to look for secrets. Movement isn't something that often comes up when discussing a game where the majority of movement is through menus, but they actually made traversal into a core mechanic, and it's fantastic. I've talked about my appreciation for fast movement in previous videos, and I think Atlus has really nailed it with their approach to the overworld, as being able to sprint across the map removes the tedium of slowly walking back to a quest location or collectible. While I expected the majority of the experience to be combat focused, there's so much more to discover. Not including random encounters requires a much different approach to map design. Instead of fearing for your life and resources while running down repetitive hallways ways, you're encouraged to check every corner of the map for secrets, treasures, and NPCs. Items aren't just hidden in chests at the end of an alternate corridor, as the game will have you climbing bridges and jumping through crumbled buildings to find a variety of collectibles, from glory points that let you purchase useful upgrades to little Memon that can be turned in for rewards. Instead of climbing a tower and pressing a button, revealing sections of the map requires you to fight a mini-boss. This doesn't mean there's no stakes to the game though, as regular enemies can still kick you straight to the game over screen if you aren't paying attention, and giant mini-bosses roam the ruined cities to keep you on your toes while adding even more reasons to revisit old areas. Unfortunately, I don't think the open world is perfect, as I did find myself missing the occasional puzzle solving and resource management that comes with exploring a dungeon. There are only 3 major dungeons in the game, and while a bit simple, the confined spaces allow for new gameplay opportunities, like observing patrol routes and sneaking behind corridors to avoid fights with powerful enemies. However, it doesn't feel like these mechanics were fleshed out during the short time you spend indoors. Overall though, SMT V manages to stay incredibly engaging for its entire runtime at the cost of slightly less tension, which feels like a more than acceptable trade-off. Tying an intense boss fight to the danger of losing an hour of progression is already a slippery slope, so tough battles are recontextualized to be exciting rather than upsetting. This isn't to say that any inconvenience is bad, as the concept of tension and release is interesting to consider when it comes to turn-based RPGs, but I think SMT V chooses to avoid leaning into the broken controller zone. Things like save points, recovery mechanics, dungeon layouts, and boss designs all have to meld together into a tightrope act of applying the right amount of pressure. You don't want a player to feel bored and overpowered while roaming the apocalypse, but you also don't want to make hour-long dungeons with doors that randomly teleport you back to where you started. I'll stop being petty soon, I promise. For the first 9 hours and 59 minutes, I was worried that the copious quality of life improvements were gonna make the game a cakewalk on normal mode, but in the 10th hour, I hit that classic Shin Megami Tensei wall. And damn, the wall has never looked better. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the funny skeleton, but that's a nice wall.
The man beside me is Yakumo. I suppose one could say he is my other half.
Aw, man. Getting absolutely smashed by a boss because you weren't sure what was coming doesn't mean you have to trudge through the sand for 20 minutes to try again. Instead, you can immediately hop into the fun part, revamping the fellas into a team that exists for the sole purpose of blasting the absolute fuck out of the specific boss that killed you. The need to constantly switch up your team results in combat never feeling the same for too long, as hanging on to most demons isn't reasonable when they're quickly outclassed by stronger ones. Going from fusing dead chickens and cute fairies to literal gods that summon meteors is an incredibly satisfying form of progression, and alongside essences that let you give anyone new skills on a whim, the sky's the limit when it comes to team composition. Are you okay? Now, I mainly centered this review around the gameplay, as it's the defining factor of SMT V, and the part of the game you're gonna spend a majority of your time experiencing. However, that also kinda contributes to its biggest disappointment, the story. I touched on the idea of Shin Megami Tensei's world building in my Nocturne video, and I still think atmosphere is one of its greatest strengths. While the series is often much lonelier than your typical RPG, striking visuals, a haunting soundtrack, and comical interactions with demons manage to give the world a real sense of life. But when it comes to telling an overall story, SMT V just doesn't. Even more so than Nocturne, which is often viewed divisively for its lack of a storyline until the later stages of the game. While it has its flaws, I really enjoyed the twists and turns of SMT 4's story, but SMT V is easily one of the weakest I've ever seen in an RPG. Turn-based games are often lauded for their elaborate stories told over many hours, and I think SMT V could have done something great, considering the scale of the rest of the experience. I wish the game did interesting things with its setting, rather than just being post-apocalyptic Tokyo again, or that it didn't just boil down to law versus chaos again. While some surprising story moments help to reflect the harsh reality of the apocalypse, most of the main characters are pretty flat and uninteresting. The game saves almost the entirety of its storytelling for the last few hours, which is a shame because it's awesome! A race to claim the throne of God while weighing the value of both demon and human lives has limitless potential, but the depth of each final decision mostly comes from pondering the philosophy after the credits roll, not from within the game itself. This doesn't mean SMT V skimps out on its writing per se, but optional events build more of a world than the main story ever does, and it's a real disappointment considering the quality of said writing. The demons easily steal the show with their witty responses and amusing requests. They'll ask you to deliver love letters or kill someone they think is annoying, and tug at the sides of your morality to see if you feel like being a square or releasing a couple sex demons into Tokyo. It'll be fine, right? Okay, so I was just reading the lore and oh no. Talking to the demons was easily one of my favorite aspects of the game, as there's so much unique dialogue for their unhinged personalities. Sometimes I'd lead a demon on only for them to say some shit like, "Damn, I'm hungry, I should go cook dinner," and peace the fuck out. There are even specific interactions that by no means need to exist, but demonstrate just how much care was put into the experience.
So here's the big question, top or bottom?
Middle? Now, while chatting it up with Satan and his homies might be a relaxing activity, you are not meant to feel safe in the netherworld, and there are tons of little details that help drive home that sense of danger. Oppressive, ominous music plays as you wander through the decaying ruins of human civilization, with hidden demons and world bosses ready to surprise you at every corner. Entering a battle with advantage plays a calm yet foreboding track, choosing to withhold the kick-ass music until you've initiated your first move. And oh man, here we are, it's time to talk about the music. What more can I say other than, holy fucking shit? The only other complaint I have is in regards to the graphics. Now, I know this sets me up to sound like an entitled gamer, but I'm more so just upset that Nintendo likes to sweep up exclusivity, but force developers to make console-quality titles run on a slightly amped-up toaster that sounds like it's screaming for dear life every time I boot up the game. This isn't to say that frame rate drops majorly affected my experience, but the jagged edges and laggy menus made me wonder if they could have cut back on certain elements like sand particles or crazy transitions to make the game feel at home on the Switch. Or if they could have just put it on a different console, maybe. There's a ton of stuff I could continue to talk about, like how Jack Frost apparently looks cute so he can murder people more easily, but I want to keep my review short and sweet. So, if you're looking for a game that prides itself on character writing and a complex plotline, you might want to look elsewhere. But if you're willing to sink your teeth into the dense atmosphere of a gritty netherworld where the main question in your mind isn't, I wonder who the villain is, but what if I just became God, I'm so much cooler, then I highly recommend checking out Shin Megami Tensei V. The turn-based combat, demon fusing, and map exploration is so finely tuned through decades of trial and error that the gameplay itself carries the entire experience. But that's about it. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, and if you want to help support my channel, you can check out my Patreon in the description. Sometimes I get sick of a game partway through or can only stomach playing it for a few hours a day, but the time simply withered away every time I launched SMT V, and after clearing every single side quest and getting the true ending, it's probably my favorite game of 2021. Wait, why is the video not ending? Oh fuck, I gotta end on a joke. Penis Chariot!